Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 43 of the Unchained Vodcast. Today, we're talking about orders and social systems, the part of the Beta 1 doc that just released 2 weeks ago. Talking about guilds, different types, different group types, and everything, all of that jazz. We're going to pour into it. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting and slightly controversial or heated topic, perhaps, but
perhaps we'll see.
We'll see. Getting into it, how's everybody in chat? Give us thumbs up if you're doing good. How are y'all doing? I know Brand is currently out of town, but your video seems to be holding up all right.
Yeah. Yep. So far.
You got an announcer mic going today.
I do. I'm holding my mic. I don't have my stand. I brought everything but my stand.
Forgot it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't fit in a suitcase.
Probably doesn't pass. You might not have to pass security with it.
You usually drive, I think, up there. So
yeah,
true. Missed the RP episode, Pocket. That's unfortunately, but it's recorded, so you can go to YouTube.
Yes. Brand missed it too.
I watched it.
Bam.
I watched it. It was fun. It looked fun. I wish I was there.
Yeah, it was good talking
it was
to Max.
Nice. It was a good one.
Yeah. So, today, this is probably going to be a little bit of a long one, so I don't want to belabor it too much. Go ahead and get right into it. Today, what we're going to do, because there's so much information, I think the first thing I want to do is overview the systems. Not really going to discuss much. I'm just going to kind of hit them, go over what's in the doc. I'm not going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb because we would be here all day, and that would be boring. I mean, you didn't come here to listen to me read off the document. Instead, for people who may not have read the group's document yet, which I encourage you to do,
it's there on their website.
I'm going to hit the high points, just everything, so it's all fresh in our minds. Then we're going to discuss principles. The document starts with a list of about 6 principles that are the principles that they want to base their group and social systems on. And we're going to talk about those, talk about whether we think those principles are appropriate for an RVR game of this type, and whether or not we think they're fulfilling those with the things that are shown in the documents. Then we want to talk about our biggest concerns and of course, with you as well. Talk about your biggest concerns, the favorite ideas, things that are in the document that we've really liked, and then maybe we'll talk about other game developers a little bit. So, let's go into that. So, real quick overview of the things that are shown to be, that are in the document that they intend to put in the game. There are multiple different group types. They consider solo to be a group type.
Yeah.
Warband is a group, essentially. Temporary battle groups are raids, orders are guilds, and we have campaigns, which are alliances of warbands and orders.
Solo players.
And solo players, yeah, I guess. And all the permanent group types grouped up in an alliance. Players get friends lists, enemy lists, blacklists, personal bulletin board, and combat stats, so you can see just how many times you have died and how many times you have killed Kriss.
Donnie T.
Sacrix.
And
how many times I've killed Sacrix?
I'm definitely going to add Donnie to my enemy list and track him down intentionally every time.
Yes.
Groups, and by groups I mean not just warbands, but warbands and orders, will have ranks within them, chat, heraldry, accolades, some type of group progression.
Yeah.
Orders themselves, which again are the guilds, will be very basic in Beta 1, but be fleshed out throughout Beta. You can only join one at a time. They will have access to the biggest plots, caravans for supplies, guild banks, guild shops, registered guild outfit, whatever exactly that means, and guild hall of some sort. And in-game calendar, can't forget that. Lots of stuff on that.
Yes.
In-game calendar is important. Campaigns, lastly, will also have the ability to create missions and contracts. So, chat has already gone quite a bit It's real hard to read long posts in there while we're holding the discussion.
Yeah.
But I don't see any questions.
I think most of the people who are here read the document and are here for the debate.
Hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. But I wanted to go through
Yeah.
it, make sure everyone's on kind of the
Yeah,
same page here.
course.
So let's get into the principles.
Mhm.
And the first principle, and again, I want to talk about these again with chat. Do you think these are good principles to have? Do you think each one of these principles, as we come to it, is a good one to have for a game of this type? Are they supporting it with the features, or are there problems, or are there things they're lacking? And the first one is no multi-guilding, which is super important.
Amen.
Huzzah.
Amen.
I know we all played TISO at one point or another, and I think it's really important to encourage organized guilds. We had a hell of a time with TISO.
We still do.
I think a lot of their features largely do support this, so long as battle groups are not permanent. I have had some concern personally with warband progression being a thing, and warband clothing, like customization to identify your warband and everything.
I think they don't have the clothing. They have the emblems, but not the clothing. The clothing is only for guilds.
I thought they could customize colors and stuff.
No, they can
Because
they
it
can
because
customize
they talked
their
about being able to have like a warband shield, but then you can have like a guild cloak or something.
Right.
Yes.
And you can mix and match.
Yeah, but the warbands only have the heraldry. The guilds have the outfit, so probably the color scheme specific to the guild or something like that. We don't know
Well,
exactly.
I want
what
my
it's gonna
guild
be.
to have heraldry as well.
They
The guilds-
should. The
the
heraldry
guilds
is part
have
of the
both.
cloaks,
And that is a problem.
and the
I don't really want them both to have heraldry. That's kind of my problem.
I'm okay with it, because you can mix and match. Yeah, you can have your warband on your cloak or on your shield or on your tabard.
Mhm.
I don't have a problem with the heraldry, honestly. I had a problem with some of the visions, the previous visions they had for battle groups, but now that's been canned, so I'm really happy about that. But the warbands having their own heraldry and their own identity, I don't have a problem with it. I think a lot of the people who have problem with the permanent warbands see it as a problem because they blame the system rather than the functioning of their own interactions. Which is why I'm not worried about the permanent warbands.
The only concern for me, and someone, Rahalden did say that the clothing is only for orders, which helps a
Yes.
little bit.
It is.
Maybe I read that
Warbands
wrong.
only have the emblems.
Maybe I read that wrong, but if say, let's talk about emblems. If warbands have emblems and orders have emblems,
Yes.
and you can decide, okay, I put my order emblem on my cloak and warband emblem on my shield, or I want my warband emblem on my cloak and my order emblem on my shield. How do other people start to recognize which one's which? And thus
Fame.
represent that guild pride. Well, I mean, can individual members decide? Can the guild as a whole decide? No, everyone's emblem
Yeah,
must be on their cloak.
That's guild
I don't
policy.
think it says, but I don't think it says that in the document.
Yeah,
That's my point. That is
but-
the issue of concern: is how
Well,
do you
the thing is-
define and make it so that everyone can identify, and within 10 seconds, and go, that's their guild.
You won't unless they have only one heraldry. Or, well, that's at the beginning of the game. The problem we've had with TISO is that you had no way of recognizing somebody's guild because you didn't have it on your name. In CE, you will be able to display your guild name on your nameplate, on top of the heraldry.
Mhm.
And then later on, what I suspect and what I hope is that the more famous and the more realm points and realm recognition your guild has, the more often you will encounter the emblem on in the Star City on some of the banners, maybe in our player-created town, you will have our banners everywhere. You might have your banner on the battlefield. Those heraldry will be visible much more than a warband that don't have all the same possibility to display it.
Now, I think the document mentioned that your order's name will be represented on your portrait. I don't recall it actually specifying that for warband. I wouldn't mind if they're both shown as long as they're in different places. So, like, warband doesn't replace order or whatever. So if you click someone, order shows up here. That would be good. Someone mentioned possibly having a different shape for an order heraldry or something, which I could see. Having something distinctive about it to help set it off.
Right. And I think part of the, you mentioned seeing the name of the order, that may go more towards the friends and enemy list, because in the document it talks about how you can create an enemy list based off of an entire warband name.
Yeah.
So you could pick a warband. You have to know the name of the warband. So there's some way to know he's in that warband. I'm going to list everyone in that warband as my enemy just by choosing the warband.
Yeah, you can list the warband itself as your enemy. So everybody in the warband is in your list.
Yeah, so it wouldn't surprise me if you can see it by clicking on somebody to know that they're in that. If it's a named warband.
The document, I don't remember exactly where in the document, but I remember distinctively on the document saying that the name of your order can be displayed on your nameplate, which means in game you will be able to see it, not just by the heraldry.
And then just distinguishing between the symbols and the heraldry.
Yes,
it's just really a matter of continuity and facing it off against the same people over and over again. You're just going to eventually know, okay, he's wearing that tabard with that symbol, Ordo Veritas.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Having your heraldry displayed, even if you have both your warband and your order, if one is famous and one isn't, the one who's famous is going to be recognized. They're going to say, "Oh, that's probably a warband symbol or whatever." But if I'll be pretentious and say that Ordo Veritas has a realm-wide recognition, and everybody knows what our heraldry is, what our logo is, they will recognize it at first sight and not always pay attention to the symbol that's going to be on the shield or on the cape or on the tabard that is representing your warband.
Yeah.
So then, that's kind of my view. Is there anything in here, and to a certain degree, I think this kind of really overlaps with the second principle of guild pride.
Absolutely.
And again, this is for chat as well. Does anyone think that this is a good principle? I, of course, do, because I'm a guild leader. But also, I voiced one issue that I have for the multi-guild, them delivering on the multi-guilding one potentially. Are there any issues that within this document that y'all still see for either of these two principles?
Not so, well.
No, yeah.
If you it will depend on the maximum number of active plus inactive warband members that you will have, and the maximum number of order or guild members you will have. From what we've heard, there's nothing official about it, but it will be around 200 at the moment. The first thought they have is around 200 for the orders. For the war bands, I think they said also same, not officially, they would be double. So that means 16 members active plus inactive. So 8 active members at the moment,
and 8 flexibles,
and 8 non-active members for a war band, and 200 members, give or take, for the orders. So if the war bands were a lot more inactive members, it can become a pseudo guild. 16 is a mini guild. I'm okay with small guilds not having to pay the price a big guild will have to pay to create the guild. A small guild of just a group of friends, 16 people.
But I feel like if you have 16 people at that point, why don't you just make a guild?
Right.
Why would they be charging a fee that's so high that 16 people playing in the game can't pay it to make a basic guild? So I do have that as a bit of an issue. I don't necessarily have a problem with the 8 to 16 member warbands that are permanent. I don't really necessarily have an issue with those, so long as guilds do have distinctive qualities and advantages, so that a guild still has value, and a guild is that the permanent warbands aren't eating away at the value of what is a guild. Because if being in a guild doesn't really have any distinct value, then there is no pride in being a guild.
Well, that's where their perks come in with banks, plot ownership.
Yes,
etc.,
the mega plots. Yes,
warbands don't have access to that.
If you're just focused on being a PvP player, you don't give a shit about the realm dynamics, the realm organization. You just want to roam and fight. Guilds are not your type anyway in the first place, so having a warband instead is fine. But it's still an 8-man. You can have 16 members total. 8 will be inactive. And I would like to point out, because I see something Rahalden is saying, is that no, if you have a character in one guild, not all your characters are going to be in the same guild, because JB specifically said everything social and grouping wise is character based, not account based. So if you create 2 characters, one you put in the guild, you don't have to be in the same guild in the other one, and they won't be tracked. That's something I'm not exactly sure how I feel about. I'm not super happy about it, because it detracts again from some of the guild pride like that. But I prefer that than being the whole account being bound to one guild and not being able to do other things if you want. So, yeah.
And I did want to reply to something in chat real quick while it's still there. Well, 2 things actually. For Halden, guild progression system is a thing they mentioned in the doc, but they also mentioned group progression for warbands, which is part of my concern. Because what does that mean? Do they have the same progression system as guilds? Is it very similar? How distinct is it? And that is something I would like to know. Because if it's too similar, then again, they're eating away from what it means to be a guild, and there's different advantages and things that guilds can have. For what Sackrick said, a bank and plot, so amazing. The structure is the problem. I do agree with you to a certain degree. However, I think the features do absolutely matter. Case in point, we had a guild in TISO. You could multi-guild in TISO, obviously, so you could. What we saw was that many members didn't care about their guilds. Many people would go in, they joined a guild, but they didn't want. We like our members to belong to our guild. We don't really care if someone groups with people from another guild, but when we're having guild events and everything, they need to be grouped with our guild. In TISO, there's like, I belong to your guild. Well, I also belong to these other 3 guilds. You all have the exact same features. There's no reason I should value your guild over the other ones. Some people would get on board with the notion that, well, we've got all these events, we're going for achievements and stuff, we want you on our events, but increasingly more and more people, they just wouldn't buy into that. They're like, no, we want to be doing this and that whenever the hell I want. And that was the problem that we saw, was a lot of these people in increasing amounts do not care about guilds, because this multi-guilding system just lets them be very flighty. They can jump to any guild they want to, and if they decide they don't like this one, well, then to hell with it. They don't have to do it anymore. And so my concern then comes, okay, you have groups that have the same social systems and things as a guild. But if a guild still has very distinctive perks and advantages, you have to be invested in that guild to get those. So if you're in a small group and you don't care about any of those, you don't care about a guild bank because you only have like 5 or 8 friends that you play with, fair enough. No problem. I don't have an issue with them necessarily having a permanent group. I don't really think it's necessary either, but I don't, I mean, I guess, okay, whatever. But when they start getting different features and things that make them more guild-like, I do have a bit of it starts to cause an issue for me.
Yeah, but sorry, go ahead, Brian.
No.
I'll take the floor to that. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say there are a lot of people who probably feel or have experienced through their MMO history being in very small guilds. These 8 to 16 range people with friends, people they meet online, and it doesn't grow much beyond that in friendly play. And those are the people who see this, I think, in my own opinion, that a warband is basically just another form of a guild because they're so used to those small groups versus guilds that we've seen and we've been part of that are 100 plus. We see the differences. We understand that these extra perks and these other things and the limitations on warband numbers, as far as people in it, very distinctly separate them between guilds and what warbands are.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I disagree with, I agree with some of what Sacrix says. I disagree with a fundamental, which is, for me, plots and most of the guild perks are not just fluff. They might seem to somebody who's not guild oriented, but a guild bank, the mega plots, for me personally as a crafter, who one of my goals being to have the first player built city, that's a huge deal. The realm recognition, just the pride itself of being part of a recognizable entity that is bigger than just a small group. Yeah, there are groups in the AOC. There were groups that were known. It was more at the time the individual members of that roaming team that were known. Now in COE it would be the warband name that would be known, but it's just a small group. For me, I like the organization and the structure of a big organized guild. MJ keeps saying he's more of a solo player. He likes guild, but he's more of a solo player. I'm a guild player. I hate pugs. I avoid it like the plague, and I mostly play with my guild. The bigger the guild, the bigger the pool of people I know and trust to play with. So for me, there's a big difference, and that's why guilds are more important. And the perks of the guild that are in games are interesting and essential in many ways, but the guild itself for me is the reason why I'm part of it. It might have I've been in guilds where the guild system in the game was one of the poorest possible. The Elder Scrolls Online, the Elder Scrolls Online on part, but the Secret World also, the guild system was horrendous. I was still part of a big guild because I wanted the structure and the organization of it. And when we went into PvP, I trusted the guys I was playing with. I knew they would do their job. That's what's important to me in PvP, especially in PvP and in PvE raiding. But in PvP, it's even more impactful because the reaction time is much faster. So there is still a real perk of being part of the guild, even with the permanent warbands.
Yeah. I would absolutely agree with you that people's perspectives are very much based probably in their own experiences in MMOs. People who have mostly played with small guilds are going to have a different view of this than people like you and I who have been in a fairly sizable guild and gaming community for a long time.
Yeah.
My only to kind of reiterate my only issue with the with the small group, the small guild view of these warbands is like mini guilds type concept is kind of goes into, again, like, I don't necessarily have a problem with warbands being permanent, but if you've got 8 to 16 people who will play together, why can't you just form a small order? Why does it have to be?
Yeah.
Why do you need a permanent warband in the first place? You could just make an order. And so that is where I do have a small bit of an issue, because we have orders, but then you have small permanent warbands. So what is the purpose of a small warband at that point? Is it so that you can, because you can only belong to one order, so is it so you can belong to also a permanent group of people who play outside of your guild? Now, we have had cases where I can see that being useful. We've had members before who belong to our community, but they have 3 or 4 friends who don't want to join, and they still play with them, so they can have a permanent group. That's fair game. I can kind of see that. But on the other hand, I can kind of see the argument where people would go, well, isn't that almost like they belong to a guild, but then they also kind of belong to a little mini guild on the side, and they still have their guild perks, but then they also have this other group that they can hang out with?
Yes and no is the correct answer. In that the thing with warbands, whether they're temporary or permanent, which is the same thing as a named warband, and named warband is a permanent warband. They're the same exact thing, however you want to abbreviate them, is that an order can create them. They're not a separate entity from an order. They can be created by an order or a guild and used as subgroups for organization. They can also be created outside of an order to exist as you say, almost a mini guild. And in that regard, yeah, they kind of can be a mini guild, but they don't meet the criteria that orders meet as far as all their perks and their progression system for those perks. At the same time, they're part of an organizational subgroup that orders and campaigns and battle groups can create, basically, to help keep things organizing groups. If you have someone mentioned in chat, like an A team and a B team, you have a scout team, a flank team.
We had in ESO, we had the scout groups that were almost permanent.
Right, and that's basically what warbands exist in my mind, thinking about PvP, how those would be working for orders, and yet they are still their own social system, but they exist both in and outside of orders.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of annoys me a bit with people who are not happy with the permanent warbands and the way that things are organized. I'm not happy with everything 100%, but you have to remember that those systems, if they don't work, first, you don't have to use them. And 2, if your order, if your guild has a problem with the permanent warbands and you don't want your members to be part of the permanent warbands, you say it in your guild rules. You don't have to have the game set things for you. We've been taught in the last few games to be lazy and to rely mostly on the game mechanics to run guilds, groups, or whatever. You don't have to. Yeah. For the longest time, the old school gamers among us worked around the system. We didn't have all the tools that guild systems have in modern games, but we still worked around them. And if you don't want your members to be part of multiple warbands, you say so. You will cut yourself from some potential recruits, but that's your guild policy. Yeah. You cannot make everybody happy.
That's what we did in the original days of TISO. I mean, we basically just said, look, you join us, you're only joining us. There's a multi-guilding system. We're not using it.
Well, we used it for guild inventory.
We used it for crafting and guild inventory. Yes. That's it. Because they capped our inventory.
Like
and trade. We did use it for a few specific things. We used it for trade. We used it for role play. Other than that, it was cut off. We were like, no, you join us. You can go PvP with them. Fine. But if we have a guild event, you're doing our guild event, and you're doing the guild event. You're not doing their event while our event's going on. And that's how we ran it. But I will just agree with Thantanos here. That's pretty much the encapsulate. I think I'm okay with warbands as much as we know for sure right now. They could release some more details on some of this and totally blow my mind and make me angry. But right now, for what I know right now, it seems like something that I'm not 100% comfortable with all of it, but I'm comfortable enough to see what they do with it, especially because they backed off of the battle groups. I have no problem with battle groups specifically, to clarify, but permanent battle groups definitely cross the line.
I was really pissed when they pitched the idea the first time. That was the thing that really set me off. I
don't think that was a thing, Kriss. I don't think that was a thing.
Yeah. No, it's not anymore.
That was never a thing.
But that proves that they listen to the community. And if the permanent warbands are not useful, and are not used, they will just get rid of them. That's the thing. Also, they listen to the community. It's their games. It's their vision. They will realize it the way they want it, but they still listen to the community. And if the community doesn't use the permanent warbands, they will scrape them. But I saw something also earlier.
Dantino said something I disagree with, but
Go ahead.
I don't think a group that always groups together is a guild, in name or not.
No.
You could have. Granted, there's other names for those like cliques, but you could have 4 to 5 small groups who enjoy playing with each other, who are then part of a greater entity, and that greater entity is what a guild is.
Yeah, and I disagree also with the fact that the battle groups are not necessary. The battle groups are
permanent battle groups.
Permanent battle groups, yes, but the battle groups as they are now, because the rest was.
You gotta have raiding. You gotta have raid groups. I mean.
But the battle groups are necessary right now. I think are a good thing actually to organize, because the campaigns, yes, the campaigns are for me something completely different. For me, the campaigns, we'll talk probably about it later anyway. But for me, they're like a sort of role-playing group. Or small, role-playing group more, or campaign groups that are here for very specific reason. If you are all in the same area, or you spontaneously arrive and there's a big fight going on, and your realm is gonna arrive, and you need reinforcement and you need organization, just make a battle group. You have channels of communication. It's an organization and strategy tool. More than anything, it's less of a grouping system because it's not permanent, but it is a really good battle system, battle tools.
And I think that's where people are like, in that the temporary warbands are exactly that, just organizational tools. But when you throw in permanent warbands, they're like, wait, what? That starts to confuse people.
Just to clarify, Kaladex, we know that there are no permanent battle groups. That was the point, saying that permanent warbands is something I'm not 100% comfortable with, but I'm okay with most of what they've put down for now, at least to see it through and see what they do with it, give them the benefit of the doubt. However, I would see permanent battle groups as crossing the line if those were to exist, which at present there are no permanent battle groups. So that was kind of the point. That was kind of the point. So yeah, we know there are no permanent battle groups in the dock right now. That is not a thing. They are all temporary.
And we love you all.
I did want to move to the next point because we've kind of talked about it a little bit. The next principle. Support for all sizes of guilds as a principle for their social systems. I personally, even though we're in what many people would consider to be a large guild community, most of our guilds are usually between 80 to 100 members. Personally, I don't consider that to be like a mega guild. I usually... I'm a reasonably old MMOer, so I usually consider those to be like the 200 and 300 size guilds.
We've seen mega guilds, and they usually have less structure than we have.
Yes,
but
that's true.
I think I agree entirely with their document. By all means, reward guilds based on activity and tenure instead of their size. Give us no credit for size. I don't care. You can reward us equally with a 10-person guild compared to a 200-person guild based only on activity and tenure. Go for it. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, part of it will probably also be based on contribution for the realm. Just as the individual contribution for a player matters, the guild contribution matters for their progression as well.
And in some ways, that means size is going to still impact it because you got more members, you can have more people doing things. But
it will, but you will reach this. It's just that you reach the same perks faster.
Yeah,
but you will not have perks based on the size of your guild,
unless it's percent based.
And I'm fine with some of the progression being based on tenure. Like your guild has existed for X amount of time. There are achievements based on that and stuff. I'm cool with that.
If you had a guild of 10 and 9 out of 10 people were 100% active in things, and you had a guild of 200 and like only 10% of them were active, I'd favor the the smaller guild.
Yeah,
as far as
definitely.
rewarding them.
Yeah,
They could definitely do something percentage based like that. Who's active when and how often, and
yeah, and
what are their
what the guilds
contributions?
do, and definitely.
Do
Yeah,
what
I'm
Vellum-
okay.
oh, Vellum
I like
said.
the idea. I like the idea of actually limiting the impact of mega guilds
Yeah.
and favoring
I-
smaller and medium size up to, I'd say, 200. Well, they're already impacting the mega guilds since they're putting a limit to the number of people you can have in one guild.
A little off topic, but I think doing that kind of helps limit some other things they're trying to keep a tab on, like zerking.
Yeah.
I do think there is one caveat with that. Or I should say, with the idea of the like percentage based stuff. 20% of your members are active versus only 10% of your members are active versus 80% of your members are active. I can see the problem in there being more casual players getting involved, because like our community, for instance, we tend to have a mixture. We tend to have some people who are really active and they're on every day for 8 hours a day, versus some people. A lot of us in our community are older. We've got full-time jobs. Many of them have kids. They can only get on for a few hours during the week, and then like on the weekends and everything, and they really have to intentionally make that time to get in. So I can see there being an issue where, depending on how rewards were based on that, a guild leader's going, well, how often do you play? Oh, you only play 10 hours a week? Well, get out of my guild. You're going to ruin our benefits.
You will always have holistic jerks. There's even a guild named like that. So
I don't.
I'm just
propose
saying
they go with any
could
kind
be
of
an issue.
percentage system. They are more experienced than I am at determining what quantifies rewards.
I actually do think something like a percentage system could work to a point.
To a point.
Yes, to a point. Not fully basing the perks of the guild on that, but having an impact. Yeah, I'm fine with. I'm fine with what we have in Auto Veritas, which is, even if we have a mix of hardcore and more casual, which are not that casual, to be honest, because yes, they have kids, but they're still on every night for at least a few hours.
We have requirements.
Yes, but we're still not a hardcore guild like the old-time hardcore guild where they raid 5 hours a day every day.
I don't think there's
7
many
days
of those
a week.
left.
There are some, but not a lot. Yeah,
not
a
to,
lot.
like to the same extent. That's what I mean.
The real hardcore ones are now pretty much all our age, have a full-time job, because the original hardcores are all in their 30s.
They've gone full adult.
Yeah. So
there's certainly still some out for some games.
but
I won't pretend
I'm okay
there are,
with
but
those who put in the time and the contribution getting more reward than I do. I'm okay with that. I don't mind. I'm still not a fan of the everybody gets everything.
No.
It pisses me off as a completionist because I can't get everything. But in the health of the community and of the system, I'm okay with not everybody having everything.
Yeah. On this topic, a similar idea, I guess, is if they're trying to support guilds of all sizes, they're also trying to support groups of all sizes, and the solo play factorization of it being an actual group. Are they then thinking that it acts almost as your own personal guild? If you want to be a solo player, are they going to then just kind of break away mechanically from the notion of these group abilities that they've been talking about when they released all the classes, to then suddenly start promoting solo play mechanically? Not just through
we've heard very little about that since the original class concepts, and that's something that I was interested in, and we still really haven't heard much about that, like the group rituals and things that like mages could do, or formations and such. I don't know. Of course, the game's delayed, and I think that was always something that's like, we would like to do this given time type concept.
Yes.
So, who knows? there was a comment I wanted to reply to. Oh, I just wanted to agree with my ID here. Obviously, certainly,
Oh, his
if,
idea.
yeah, it's his idea. But
It's his idea here.
a crafting guild needs to be able to get the same rewards as a PvP guild.
They already
they
said
have
it's
to have
gonna be the
ways in
case.
there to measure everything based on
Yeah.
activity, and
Because
that's
crafting is
hard
part
to
of the
figure out.
moral
But
effort.
they know what they're doing, I'm assuming, so they can figure that out. I'm not going to work on that for them. It's too complicated for me. Too many percentages and things. I can't.
Too much math.
I'm a librarian. I don't do math like that.
Yeah.
I'm a receptionist. I don't do math either.
Hellsetch is talking about UI. Yeah, actually,
I'm really interested in how they're going to do because I'm really concerned. That's one
yeah.
thing, and I know everybody will be surprised by that, but that's one thing I really agree with the Sacrex. That is the UI with all. Yeah, I know. Surprising as it is, the UI is going to be critical because they did say, and I think it's actually in their foundation principles, that you will be playing the game and not the UI. With all the different systems that they have in place for groups and guilds, having the UI work with all those things is going to be really complicated. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they're approaching it and they're tackling that. But yeah, it's one of my concerns too, how big the UI will be. In terms of importance, not just taking the whole screen, but in terms of importance. One thing that reassures me is that with their API being completely open and free, we will have the option to have a lot of mods, and I know a lot of people will be able to customize their UI.
Not only that, they're using CSS and
Yes.
some forms of HTML5 to do a lot of their visuals for UI, which is such an easy language to learn that half the people in chat can just go to a website right now and probably start messing with the UI of this game if it was out.
Yeah. I did want to, before I move to the next principle, I did want to respond to Calidex's question directly at me. What do you think of people using named warbands to build Confederation-type orders made up of elite 8-mans? Honestly, I don't think about that at all. Because, as I mentioned earlier, I don't really think... I think overall, MMOs have been swarmed by two... Well, so MMOs have been overtaken a bit by, one, large amounts of casual players, because the market itself has just broadened and embraced so many different types of gamers, whereas before there were tons of these elite gamers. I honestly think proportion-wise, there aren't that many truly elite MMO players anymore. And two, many of the people who were back in the day and are a significant portion of the market for this game, elite MMO players, as Kriss and I have mentioned, have gotten older, have full-time jobs, have kids. Even, and Mark Jacobs has said before, can't play this game that much. So yeah, sure. I'm sure that there might be a couple of those small groups that come together, and they'll probably be really effective and really powerful. And if they can organize that and keep it structured, more power to them. I have no problem with someone who is good at the game being good at the game. And even without these permanent groups, I think they'd figure out a way to do it anyway. They just make guilds and do that. And we can have campaigns, which are basically alliances. So even without the small groups, I think they could still have guilds and set these up anyway. So
with it's hard because with the RVR system being advertised as 1,000+ players on a single battlefield.
Yeah.
When you're talking about an 8-man group being impactful and successful, I'm sure they can contribute, but in those amount of numbers,
that's a good point too, yeah.
I see elite players flocking to orders to create bigger groups that are more impactful than a single 8-man group will be in the numbers we're talking about.
Yeah, I think elite small groups is a concept for smaller scale MMOs for sure. You're talking about WoW arenas, absolutely. I mean, you only have 4 people that can go in, or 2 people that can go in, or how many ever they can go in. You're talking about Guild Wars, where you've only got, I don't even remember how many people were in RVR for Guild Wars 2 now. But you're talking about these smaller scale battles, and absolutely, a elite 8-man can be a thing. And I think it can be a thing in this game too, but the amount of impact they can have is going to be mitigated by the sheer number of other players and also the horizontal progression system for the game. You can't have 8 people who have absolutely ground through the game and are way higher level than everyone else, and they can run out and crush everybody by themselves because the power difference isn't supposed to be that steep.
Yeah,
Right.
and as Vellic said, I'm okay with a smaller guild of say 4 warbands, very organized, min-maxed to the maximum possible, and really skilled. Even if they're in another realm and they're crushing us on that battlefield, I'm okay with that. They played the game as it's intended to be played,
And that makes
they're
sense.
organized around their warband. That's fine also. That's their organization. I'm not going to advocate for something that is matching my guild's organization for everybody. As long as the system is flexible enough to accommodate every type of player or organization that is going to be in this game, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about 4 groups of 8, 32 players on at the same time, which is hard to do. Even for a guild with 32 players, to get all 32 players on at the same time is damn near impossible.
Yes.
So, 1, congratulations if you've done that.
Yes.
2,
Well,
I expect to lose if your entire guild is actually there and organized and structured. That makes sense. It's hard to deal with that many groups of skilled, organized players.
Now, I did want to move on to our next principle, if we can. We still got like 2 left. And then a couple other topics I wanted to follow up with.
Long video today.
They said they wanted to
document also.
Exactly. They said they wanted to embrace the differences that RVR requires. And honestly, I thought about this for a while, and I'm not entirely sure what differences it requires in terms of guilds and grouping. I mean, campaigns are great, as are bounties and missions, but does it really require supporting small groups? Now, actually, on that point, I should say, I actually agree with Sacrix a little bit on this, that not all battles are going to be 500 versus 500 versus 500.
Oh, yeah.
Surely not. It might be
still,
8v8.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes it's going to be small battles going on.
Or they're going to be 8v20.
But does it really necessitate...
When you're ambushing a caravan that is defended, you might be outnumbered.
But does it really necessitate supporting small groups? Like, I'm trying to figure out what they mean in context of this document for embracing the differences that RVR requires.
I think they're talking more about the RVR versus PvP, where PvP is purely focused on small groups, because PvP is often focused on individual balance, 1v1 balance.
This document focuses quite a bit on small groups.
It does.
Yes and no. Yes and no, because we focused a lot on a lot of the topics and a lot of the recrimination that we've seen focus on the name warbands, on the permanent warbands. That's just one part of the document. It's not the main focus. I've read in chat, and that's been said, that MJ said the balance will be around 8 men, so around the warbands. So that's why also warbands can be permanent, probably, is because because let's be honest, you can be 200 on the battlefield. You don't organize 200 people individually. You organize groups, and then the groups organize themselves inside. So basing your balance and your dynamics in battle, not in social, but in battle, around warbands, around groups, is actually a smart idea. So embracing the differences for me is that they focus on the balance on the groups, but they know that the social dynamics and the social interactions transcend that small group. You interact with your whole realm in whatever you do, be it, especially if you're mostly part of a warband, not an order. You're gonna have to go to other orders or other players for your crafting needs, because hopefully they will stay on that. But they did say that having a crafter alt, a crafter mule, will be a full-time job. Being a crafter will be a full-time job. So you can't have just your crafter mule that crafts your weapons whenever you need.
Yeah.
So you will have a full interaction. They're trying to cater to all types of groups to try to create, for me, a realm dynamics. So it's realm versus realm rather than PvP.
Well, you say that, and I think the two things, PvP and realm versus realm, RVR, are basically synonymous with each other at this point as far as MMOs is concerned. If you say an RVR game, PvP is the first thing that comes to most people's mind.
Definitely.
So the two are very close to each other, different concepts, but very close to each other in meaning. And in that regard, they're trying to make a game that isn't just 500 people against 500 people.
Yes, of course.
Using abilities and just going back and forth. They're adding all these different environments to fight in, locations, things to fight for, all sorts of different functions and concepts to promote motivation for PvP in small and large scale, because it's going to exist. You're not always going to be running with 500 people at your side. You know,
Probably actually,
you might log in, Kriss, at 2 a.m. and be like, oh, hey, 5 of my friends are on, let's go do this. So it's you and 5 other friends, and there has to be things for you to do for it to be fun.
Yes.
So they're differentiating their mechanical systems with the social systems so that they're giving small groups and larger groups things to do and contribute towards.
Yes.
Now, I will say, my idea here mentioned that limited force socialization will help RVR out, which I can agree with. I like the idea of some degrees of force socialization. And the idea of the permanent or named battle warband actually, in some ways, seems to both encourage socialization and work against it. Because on the one hand, it seems to encourage initial for socialization, because I'm assuming, I mean, they have listed that it'll kind of recommend people to you that you've grouped with in the past, but there isn't any kind of like a group finder system that we know of yet to just pop up and go, hey, join this group. So you have to actually talk to people and go, hey, can I join your group? So that's good. But then, since they're permanent, once you find that group of people to group with, you can join their permanent warband or whatever, and you don't have to do that anymore.
Yes and no. That's the same. We focus on the named warband, while forgetting that most of the warbands, I think, are going to not be named and going to be temporary.
Most.
You have 5 people online on your friends list that are yes or no part of your order. You will not create a permanent warband to group with them this evening. You will just create a group and go fight with the group. So there will still be the traditional group that ends up when everybody logs off.
Yeah, to the same coin, I don't go out in general chat being like looking for guild, find a guild, and then be like looking for guild. I've found my guild. Why am I gonna go socialize with other people now that I found the people I'm gonna socialize with? Same thing with warbands. Once you found them, it makes sense. You're not gonna really go socialize with anyone else because you found your buddies.
And to kind of counter my point from earlier, with something I thought of, I mentioned that the document seems to focus quite a bit on small groups and warbands, because they mention all these new ideas and features for warbands, all these things that they're adding to the game for warbands. How many new things are they adding for orders? How many new things are they adding for guilds? There's some things in there for sure, but one, they did say they're holding off on some ideas. Hopefully that's true. But two, there's not a whole lot of things in there that are new or reinventing the wheel, but to some degree, you have to look at that and kind of go, is there that much to reinvent? Because MMOs have had guilds for ages. We've been building on that system for the last 20 years. How much is there left to give to guilds and add and innovate? They've added a few things, whereas permanent warbands is a totally new thing that they can stick stuff into and add some stuff. So I guess to be fair, I guess against my own point, maybe there's just not that many new things to be added to guilds because we've kind of been beating that horse for a while.
That and they also ended their order topic with we don't want other companies to see our ideas and steal them, which is what they've been doing. So we're just not going to talk about that. We're just not going to talk about those right now.
Yeah.
So you don't get as much from those as much as you got from the warbands with this initial release of the document.
Now, my last principle to bring up here, to get us most of the way through this, they've said that they want to instill a sense of belonging in orders. And they kind of presented a sort of social media type idea of bulletin boards and your chat and everything, where you can post things to your bulletin board in game, and you can have post pictures to it and all sorts of stuff. And they kind of likened it to social media. Embed pictures and videos and things.
Yeah.
And I will say conceptually, like, I don't entirely have an issue with it. We have a lot of those tools ourselves as an organized community. We have our own forum. We have our Discord. We can have ways to share this stuff. I can see this being useful, though, for guilds that don't already have that infrastructure set up. They can go, oh, I can have a place to put a video guide and go, and then other guilds are going to be like, cat pictures. I don't know.
Or worse.
What the hell they're going to use it
or
for.
worse.
To be fair,
or worse, yes.
As a crafter, I'm interested in, because it's going to be my storefront. You post the achievement of the people who you crafted for. Say, I crafted the Excalibur for Vellic, and Vellic won this battle. I'll post that on my bulletin board. That's my ad. That's my commercial for saying I made the best weapons ever.
There's got to be
Come buy from me.
There's got to be a more lore friendly way of doing it. I would much rather see the social media bulletin board be more of a direct integration with VoIP, like Discord, being able for other people not in the guild to come over, click on our board right outside our guild hall, and have a direct connection to our Discord and ask a question or something. If they don't know it, if they can't get in our Discord, that's one way for them to at least reach out to us and be like, hey, are you guys accepting applications or blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I've actually kind of wondered if they are going to design that particular feature for orders, or if it is like they're integrating Discord. Are they actually eyeballing a different company to integrate with like that, that they could just, build it into the game itself, I had kind of wondered that, because that does seem, like Sacrix mentioned, that does kind of seem like a waste of their resources to have them having someone have to program effectively an entire social media system just for the game. Even if it's a very basic one, that seems like something that's like, wow, that just seems like it would be really labor intensive. Whereas, but there are a lot of things like V-Bulletin and things like that they could perhaps just drag it in and go, okay, we can make a few changes here and there and how we want it to set up and display. Other than that, it's pretty much already good to go.
Totally. And V-Bulletin is heavily CSS integration as far as displaying it. So, there's PHP to it too, but it's not too far out of the realm of kind of what they're doing for a lot of their UI visualization.
That's it. I was trying to see if there's anything in chat. Zarfe wants to know if your main will be a crafter, Kriss. Oh, you already told him. Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. It would be cool if crafters had an online list of things that they created, like a portfolio that displays in a 3D image. You could have like an album. I made this,
image,
and I'm
not sure it's going to be possible. But with the open API, I'm fairly sure you can actually pull data from the game into a web page to display your crafting skills and things like that. So, or you can put that on the bulletin board. Both work.
What
I
what if
would
it,
be okay with the bulletin board being displayed not on your UI, but in the world in the game, like say
A
on a
physical
panel.
wall.
Yeah, on the panel in
Yeah.
front of your store
yeah?
or in front of the guild wall.
What if you had like a like in Fortnite, you have the collection that you can put weapons and stuff into?
Yeah.
They could just do something. They could do something like that where you create something and go, "This one's awesome. I want to put it in my scrapbook."
Yeah.
Sure.
And it could
I
be
don't
an actual bulletin board where people have to go to your guild hall and pin something on your bulletin board. So go and type something on your bulletin board, but they have to go physically there to post it. It's not as practical, and a lot of people will bitch about. But it would be, in my opinion,
People complaining, never.
no. MMO players complaining about something.
Never.
No, that's a myth.
Crazy talk.
But
See,
yeah,
not too far off of that, they have the friends and connections and the data tracking or the metric tracking
Yeah.
to see like how many people you've killed or how many people have
Yeah.
killed you,
Yeah.
who your enemies are,
You can make that
your
public.
nemesis. You could do the same thing with
Yeah.
crafting for you.
Yeah.
How many items? How many times have you built this item? What is your best item that you've built to date? That kind of
Exactly.
thing.
And that's something that, as a crafter, I would be willing to display in front of my store
Yeah.
to show people what kind of things I can make, and make them decide to go to me to craft their item rather than the other crafter next door.
They can implement some social media systems where you have a thumbs up, a thumbs down when people were to review your service.
Yeah,
5 stars.
Kriss only has a 78% likes for his crafting. I'm not buying something from him.
the CU TripAdvisor.
3.2 out of 5 stars with 70 reviews.
Anyway, to kind of start winding this down and closing it out a bit, I did want to ask again for chat and you and me, what are your biggest concerns with the things that they've revealed here?
The overcomplication. Well, their system is extremely complicated. I wonder how much of it they're gonna be able to put together by launch.
It's pretty complex.
My worry is what their prioritization will be in the features they have in at launch. I wouldn't care if the bulletin board is not in here at launch. I wouldn't care if some of the personal features like the metrics visible right away. Shortly after, especially for the competitive players, it would have to be there. But like,
I want it visible to me, maybe visible to public. Yeah, I could.
yeah, but yeah, the bulletin board, the personal email, that's pretty easy to do, especially if they integrate Discord. That's actually probably part of it. But yeah, one of my worries is the prioritization of their development time in all those features, and again, the integration in the UI.
I think my biggest concern is that orders will not get the love and the proper fleshing out that others social systems are going to get, other groups are going to get. I think warbands are going to see a lot more initial favor from the developers, and I'd like to see orders kind of more fleshed out sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Especially for guilds who are pre-launch guilds, knowing more about guild features and the way guilds are going to work is always beneficial for us. I just hope that they kind of commit to that. We still want guilds to be meaningful.
Yes.
And maybe even more so meaningful than warbands.
Yeah, for me, the warband kind of on the similar line to the end part of that. Warband progression and accolades. That's one of the main things I'm real hesitant about. I'm kind of worried about that a little bit. Not in that they can replace guilds, but they make it more. They can the idea that they could possibly make it more difficult to identify what is a guild or to identify guilds in game, just generally diminishing the meaning of belonging to one versus just belonging to these smaller groups and such. We've got a couple good comments in here. Sacrix mentions UI visualization. I know Kriss already mentioned that, and that's definitely a concern with all these groups, especially the having unlimited number of war bands in like battle groups and everything. How do you fit this stuff in there in an intelligent way?
Concerned about that, mostly because I know at the end of it all, it's moddable. There will be if it turns out it's not so great initially, there will be a mod that makes it great.
Not just that. They don't put it's not unlimited warband in the battle group. They don't put limit on it. I don't see any leader with half a brain putting 200 warbands in his battle group for one fight.
It's crazy.
And having to deal with the headache of organizing all that. Yeah. I suspect actually battle groups are going to be a lot more limited when what a lot of people fear, because leaders will rather have 2 or 3 battle groups with a certain amount of warbands to deal with, rather than having to deal with 400 people and organizing that. I don't know a lot of MMO players that are willing to go with the headache of that.
Yeah. Now, Sacrix also mentioned the catering to everyone, which is something else that I happen to agree with to a certain extent. Not so much the small groups as much as the repeated mentions of solo players and everything. Yes, I understand in the modern MMO market, you do have to make it so that people can solo, that solo players can still have fun and do many of the same things, or many things in the game. They have things to do. But the frequent mention of people being able to solo kind of bugs me. I'm sorry. I know it may be slightly controversial for some viewers, but whenever we're in the weekly Q&A and stuff, and someone comes in there and goes, "Can I solo with such and such class?" My immediate thought is, I don't give a shit.
And my immediate reaction is, I hope not, because I hate.
It's an MMO.
You're playing an MMO. Exactly. That's the later MMO mentality. I want to be in an MMO when I want to play on my own. Go play a single player.
I solo in multiplayer games very frequently. I don't expect to have as good of a time doing it as people are when they're grouped. When I play Fortnite, I'm usually playing by myself, and I expect to have more problems than the people who are grouping because it's a multiplayer game. And so there's a certain amount of that. Now, I know not everyone that asks that question is asking, can I do everything everyone else can? And so that's fair enough. And I do think there should be some support because they got to make money. But it is a thing that I worry about when they keep talking about solo play, it keeps coming up in different releases and things. I know some people are concerned about it and they want to know about it. But then when you keep mentioning it, there are other people who are starting to get irritated. And I am sometimes one of them. Nanolac mentioned that he had no concerns, but beta will tell more. And this is really, I think, ultimately where I'm at. I think I'm pretty okay with the document as it is until we know more. You know, until beta shows us more about how this stuff's going to work out.
And as to respond to Sacrax, Bren kind of did it also. They did say that they will not restrict the modability of the UI. They said they will restrict the metrics that you will have access to, but not the modability of the UI. So you will be able to modify visually the UI as much as you want. You can make a futuristic holodeck for a start you want for your UI, but there are some data that will not be accessible. That's it.
And that's all I was referring to, was that cleaning up the UI if the UI for these social groups is a little cluttered.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not worried about how that's going to look because there's going to be a mod for it.
Most likely,
Let's see. So, what are your biggest likes from the document?
Surprisingly enough, the campaign actually is something that I was surprised.
Missions and bounties.
Yes, For
There
me,
you
very
go.
much.
That's it.
as
That's it.
as former,
Into it.
because I don't have a group right now, but as a former DM for pen and paper RPGs, campaigns for me are the perfect opportunity to make RP meaningful in PvP.
Yeah.
Campaigns you can create an RP campaign that actually has an impact on the PvP game and is not just the newest word, circle jerking, trying to speak old convoluted English, sitting on their ass in a tavern. But you can actually go and conquer things, get rewards for that, increase your in-campaign levels for your character, and actually have a meaningful impact while still doing RP. So I like the campaigns, actually. Yeah.
Speaking
And I think
words to
it's-
Vellic's heart.
Well, and I think outside of just roleplay, honestly, the thing I'm excited about is the potential for helping to organize pugs. If we have our guild and we're in a campaign and there are a bunch of individual players and small 5 to 8 man to 16 man groups that are in that campaign, and we want them to go kill this castle or help us kill this castle, instead of having to go, guys, can we have a meeting outside a game, can we get some of you together, blah 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 blah, which we still do, and it's irritating and it doesn't really work very well and it's a pain in the ass. We can just go in game and be like, okay, 1,000 gold thrown on this because we're a big guild and we've got money to throw around. Help us murder this freaking castle.
We
and then
want
people
these
in the
spots,
campaign will go
let's
help us
evict
murder the
them.
castle.
The
I like
eviction notice has been sent.
I like that too. The organization and the social aspects they're not new for any of these groups, but by adding in these features for campaigns and battle groups, mostly the campaigns, these alliances, it makes it easier in trying to form friendly relationships with other large
Just
guilds
hire
or
mercenaries if you can
small
afford it.
guilds. We've tried in the past for PvP and in general, just having good ties and relationships with other guilds, and this kind of
It's
promotes
hard.
that a little bit more. It's hard, and this maybe promotes it a little bit, makes maybe not easier, but they
Yeah.
kind of want you to do that. They're putting into
Yeah.
the option for you to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to other guilds already. You still have to go out there. You still have to meet with them. You still have to organize, especially with the other big guilds, the other organized guilds. But when it comes, let's face it, the bulk of players in any MMO are the people in small guilds, or the casual players, or the people who don't even have a guild and don't bother with it, and they're just running around doing whatever. The random pugs and stuff probably make up at least 40% or more of the player base in your realm at any given time, and they're always logging in like, where's the fight? I don't know, and they go to some random battle and they're kind of wasted, and they might be wasted too. Whereas this system would at least allow you to have some ways when it really matters to incentivize some of those people to do certain things that would actually benefit the realm and the realm efforts. Which I think
And I disagree with Sacrex saying that it's a boiled down easy access for everyone, because it's actually saving. It's not just easy access for everyone. It's saving the headache for those of us who want to organize the realm, to give the carrot for the selfish solo players to do something for the realm rather than just for their own ass.
Yeah. If we go back to TISO, despite the things we say about it and its multi-guilding, when we were forming PvP groups, when we had our raid in Vokandine going, there would be a lot of people who weren't in a guild or were in a very small guild be like, hey, can we join your raid group? We want to participate. Having then to either, because of how we structured our groups, we had specific people doing specific things.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a task for the one person who really had control over the whole group to kind of delegate where that person's going and whatnot. Now you have warbands, temporary warbands, with a leader and ranks within each of these warbands. That leader then takes on the responsibility of figuring out, it's like, okay, join this warband. That person then, the leader of that warband, then deals with that rather than the person running everything. It just helps so much organizational wise.
Yeah, and especially having in-game voice chat.
Yeah.
We usually, I mean, we'll still use our own Discord.
Yeah.
And we honestly, if we're gonna pull pugs in, we might as well pull them into our Discord, into our PvP channel, and be like, come in here and hang out because you got to listen to what we're saying. If it's a big event, anyway.
Yeah.
But in many circumstances, this actually this sort of organization can actually help us make it so that level is not necessarily going to be necessary for a large amount of people. We can just go, okay, just go do that thing. Come with us. We don't necessarily have to drag you into our Discord and tell you, all right, we're going left now, going around this big rock. We're all moving together over here, and so on and so forth. We can just go, yeah, you come with us and do your thing, but we're going to be over here. Maybe we have some pugs and stuff in with us.
Or you need a distraction. You're planning an event, you need a distraction. Create a campaign, send the pugs, attack this thing, what you're actually doing your own objective. Cannon fodder.
Go way over there. Yo, keep going. Let's see. One of my big things is honestly the in-game calendar. That is huge for me. I mean, we have our own forum, we have our own calendar, we even have a calendar bot on our Discord now to post events up and go 24 hours. There's an event, and then 10 minutes ahead of time, there's an event. But having an in-game calendar is going to be so nice. Oh,
yes.
So many games don't have that, and I'm like, that's not even hard.
Yeah.
Come on.
Some of them do, some of them don't, and even the ones that do, they're just, here's the date.
Can we get can we set multiple reminders or something? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
People need a little ping.
Overall, I really like most of the features that have been shown. There are concerns, of course, but for the most part, I think it's a well organized document and strategy for organizing groups and orders and everything. So yeah, I had my concerns, but a lot of the changes they made in the published document alleviated a lot of them.
I think they've definitely earned the earned some patience to see the rest of the features and how it's coming out. And that's usually how I look at these releases and stuff, because I'm like, they're not giving us the full details. They're just putting out the basic concepts. And
for beta.
With this one, they went a little more in depth because it was necessary. It really was necessary to give more information and more details. Yes.
And because it made the IT forum explode.
We've waited this long, so.
I don't know if their Word document pages that all of this is on translates page for page to the beta doc that's online. Like if page 1 on the Word doc is just page 1 on the beta doc, it's a 1-to-1.
No.
It is 1-to-1. They're almost done.
No, it's not 1-to-1.
Well, they're
as a translator, I can tell you it's not 1-to-1.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the last thing I did want to cover with this, which we've kind of hit on a little bit, is they basically we had a whole episode on this kind of, but they basically admitted in the document that there are certain other developers that are kind of stealing their ideas.
Yes. we talked about this.
We already knew that.
We already knew that very much, but this is the first. This is the closest I think they have ever come to admitting that they feel the same way.
Yeah.
They call them neighbors. Yeah, you can call them what you want to in chat, but they are neighbors.
They explicitly said in the document that there are some guild features that are not in this document.
Yeah.
Because other parties would probably are probably watching and would feel inclined to duplicate, which to a certain degree, as we've discussed before, to a certain degree I can't blame. I mean, you have to be competitive.
Sure.
When you're rival companies, you have to watch what the other company is doing, see and remain competitive to maintain your advantage against them if you have any, or to try to get some kind of a competitive advantage. But as a gamer, I don't have to worry about that. I can just be snippy and say that they suck.
Yes.
Quit stealing our crap.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but I
Yes.
understand it. You want
Yeah.
to protect your own thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, definitely.
You don't want them being used by your competitors.
Yeah.
You certainly want them to copy them afterwards, because that just shows you had a good system. That just
Right.
shows you had something that was a good idea. But you really don't want it coming out at the same time as yours, because then it's like, oh, our game looks just like their game.
Not when the competitor is competing for literally the same market of people for the most part.
Part of the same market, anyway.
Part of it.
A
A
little
large
bit of
portion
different
of it.
demographics.
There are some
There's some
very
overlap.
similar keywords when you search these things up.
Anyway,
Yes, Caladex. Opinions aside, though, they are still a competitor.
Yes.
yeah. The games are very much different, for sure. And some of the markets that they each appeal to are different. But they are still competing for some of the same market segments. And, you know, that does then make it a bit of a problem.
The one thing I'm interested also in is that they talk about order holes. The order holes,
Just different.
we know that we can build our own.
Halls.
So why mention it in here?
Because it's different. It's not something you build. I'm
No,
guessing.
it's going to be something that you
I'm
will
assuming,
have in the Star City.
Possibly.
I'm assuming maybe that's how I read it. When I read the document,
Yes,
I did make note of that they specifically mentioned order halls, which, by the way, I kept thinking you were saying order holes, and I was really confused and concerned. But when I read
This is
order
not that
halls,
kind of
that's what I
There
was
are
thinking.
some also
like,
in the orders.
Order hall, so is that going to be like an instance thing in the safe zone, kind of like player housing or something that will have?
Basically what I took it, like an actual
Guild housing. Yeah.
guild
Mhm.
house, a guild hall that is different from a frontline building that you create with your resources.
Yeah, this
Which
one
would be
is
cool.
game. This one is game provided, realm provided, rather than player built.
Or as Swazi mentioned, you know, it could be something you could put on a guild plot, as
then
a constructed
instant.
building as well.
I'd rather it was your representation in the Star City.
That would be
because that
that could be a cool
what
thing.
would be great is that
that'd be public, obvious
Yes.
to people.
and PR, because the more realm reward, the more realm recognition you get. The grander your guild hall, or the grander the closest to the king castle you get.
Mhm.
Then you have multiple things like people can go if you're a really successful guild, even whether you're big or small or whatever.
Mhm.
People can go and see your guild city and see your huge guild city. That's amazing. Or they can go in the city and maybe see your guild hall, and it's really got all this cool achievements and stuff that's showcased in there that you might not put in a guild city because it's gaudy.
And because
Whereas
it
you
might be
could stick
taken-
it.
And it might be
Well,
taken.
it might be taken, but also, I mean, if you've got like 300 accolades, do you really want to line them down the streets of your guild city? So everyone that
people
walks
do.
through there has to
Some
be like,
people will.
who
some
do these
people
guys
will.
think they are? Seriously.
Some people have gold-plated pillars in their
horse.
houses.
My horses-
Gold-plated
Some people have
toilets
no
in my
taste.
guild city.
Yeah.
Anyway,
if it's not
that's
that, I see it as
speculation, though.
an instant add-on to
Yeah.
a built city.
Yeah.
There are things that you can add on to your city as you're building that are pre-built. This would be just one of those things, and it going through it portals you
Maybe.
to your guild hall or something.
Maybe. So that's pretty much it. We've been here for quite a while.
Yes,
But we had a
that
good
was a long
conversation.
episode.
There was a little bit of disagreement, a little bit of agreement, and a whole lot of huh. So I do want to thank everybody for coming out. We will once again be at this point we are back on schedule, so we will
Yes.
again have
Yes.
another episode in 2 weeks. I have no idea. I think we're going to be talking about the rest of the beta doc, honestly, like not specifically
Whatever
this,
comes out between now
but-
and then.
well, and
Unless
the
a
other
big
and some of the
document
other parts
comes
of the
out.
beta document. But I think I think that was probably the intention, is to really discuss some more of the beta document. We will see.
Yeah.
We will see. Kind of depends
To
on
be
what comes out.
decided.
If there's enough stuff that comes out that we really want to talk about, then that will be the case.
Maybe we can bug another developer to join us for a completely different topic.
Yes.
JB.
JB with programming, Andrew with Andrewmation.
That would be your podcast then.
Oh, I
'Cause
wouldn't.
I would
I'd
have
plan
no
it. I wouldn't
idea.
be there. You know.
I would have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, Brand did all this work and got Max to agree to come on to the cast and then couldn't be here.
And couldn't attend.
Anyway,
okay.
thanks everybody.
Yeah,
Go
thanks
ahead.
for coming.
Thanks for coming. We will see some of you in 2 weeks, hopefully. If you're watching on YouTube, we'll have another recording popping up in 2 weeks. You can hit subscribe to get updated when we have that go up. Or you can join us live at 6:30 PM EST. Thanks, everybody, and we will catch you later.
Later.